For this last exercise of the chapter, we're going to develop a class, the shape class, that we're going to use as a basis for the next chapter where we're going to study inheritance. Inheritance is the ability for a class to inherit its instance variables and methods from another class. But before we get into inheritance, let's just take a look at this shape class as one more example of how to write classes in Ruby. So we start off with our definition. For our initialize method, we're going to have two parameters, x and y, because we're going to define a shape in terms of its xy coordinates. And that's all we need for the initialize method. Next, we want to make x and y readable and writable. So let's do that next. Next, we're going to define a toString method that will allow us to examine the state of a shape. So that's a very simple method definition also. And then finally, we're going to define a move method that allows us to change the xy coordinates of a shape. So that ends this preliminary definition of the shape class. Then we can try it out real quick. Don't need a semicolon. Sometimes get my languages confused a little bit. Now let's move S1. We'll move it 5x and 2y. And then display it again. So let's see how that works. So let's run the program. All right, so we see that our xy starts out at 10, 12, and then it becomes 15, 14, because we moved x5 and y2. So let's take one more look at shape. And understand that normally we would not use a shape by itself in, say, a geometrical program or a graphics program. We would always have some type of shape, either a circle or a square or a rectangle. So in a real program, we would not probably use the shape class as is. But it does become a good, what's called base class or superclass for types of shapes. And in the next chapter, we're going to talk about how we use inheritance to define types of objects. For example, rectangle is a type of shape. Circle is a type of shape. Or another way to say that is circle is a shape. And so we use inheritance to define is-a relationships. And we're going to see how to do that in the next chapter when we look at inheritance.